All right. Good morning, everyone. I hope everyone's safe. I hope everyone's okay. My name is Pedro Cruz. I'm a developer advocate at IBM, and we also have Dan. Oh, over here, Dan.
Hey, good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Excited to be here.
Awesome. So, if you're watching us in the chat, please feel free to let us know where are you calling from. I am from San Juan. Actually, I just moved to Yauco, Puerto Rico. Dan, where are you from?
I am in Fairfield, Connecticut, so it's about an hour east of New York City. So we're doing pretty good here in Connecticut, fortunately. Probably hotter here actually than in Puerto Rico right now.
Actually, yes. Right now it's like 85 degrees. How hot is it over there?
Yep. Yeah, we're getting pretty close to it now. Looks like it's going up to 86 today. Nice. Yep. Pedro, I hope we didn't lose you there in the freeze, but we got you in a nice smile, which is great. So while we wait for Pedro to come back, thank you for joining this. We're going to talk a bit about Call for Code. If you're excited about participating, we'll get you into some of the details around what the competition is looking for, what you'll need to submit, as well as some top tips, right? So there's some best practices in there that'll help you make the best impression on the judges. Call for Code is a technology competition, but the solutions are addressing humanitarian issues. So the judges we have are technical folks, but they're also people who are experts in the field of climate change or pandemics. So we want to make sure what you build and what you present is very consumable by a wide set of judges, so they know the value of what you built and the potential it has for deployment.
Yeah, exactly. And apart from that, we're also going to be showing the previous two winners of Call for Code. First year, 2019, was Project Owl, and last year was Prometeo. So we're going to go over their submission videos, and as well as give tips and tricks for you to also make sure you start very early in this process. The submission video is one of the most important things. So we'll teach you a few tips and tricks and what made Project Owl and Prometeo very successful in their submission. So Dan, how about you take it away, share your screen, and get started.
Okay, I think my screen is sharing right now. So again, to learn about the competition, go to developer.ibm.com/call-for-code. We just had a flash on the screen there. That's where you'll learn how to get started in the competition, work your way through the process. So if you have any other questions, go there, you register for the competition. It'll show you how to join Slack too. Pedro and I are in Slack. We can answer questions after this call. If you're listening to the recording, catch up with us there or ask them here. Great. So let's just start quickly though with what is Call for Code. So Call for Code is it's a program that IBM, the United Nations, and Linux Foundation have been running for the last 3 years. We're in our third year of a 5-year program for it. It's the largest Tech for Good competition out there. And what really sets it apart is that we do have a way to actually deploy the solutions that win the competition. So what you bring to the competition, what you submit, doesn't need to be completely production grade ready to go, but it should be something that is something that has the potential to be a practical, effective, and high quality application that can be a sustainable open source project. And it's not just about winning the prize. We'll actually help the winner deploy that solution, fill in the gaps that they may have in their teams around hardware expertise, software expertise, user experience, connecting with ecosystems, things like that. But the end goal, which keep in mind when you participate in Call for Code, is that you do want to create something that can make a difference, that solves a real problem, that's measurable, and can live on as a sustainable open source project. So the roadmap in your solution is pretty important, which we'll get to in a little bit. But there are prizes, right? We're not going to lie about it, right? $200,000 for the top winner is a big deal. We also have runners-up prizes of $25,000 each. And then the third and fourth and fifth place teams also get $10,000. So each idea that comes through, we want to make sure it's shared with the world, whether it's a grand prize winner or not. But we also want to help you deploy that solution through a separate program we have with the Linux Foundation, Code and Response with the Linux Foundation. And again, what we want to do with these ideas, they've come through a couple of months of hacking and development, but we want to be able to take those ideas, incubate them, improve their scalability, the security, get them connected for testing with partners, and then make sure that they have a way to be either funded or otherwise have a sustainable open source project around them. So, so very, very interested in helping support your ideas. So I'm going to pop over to my web browser here to give you some pointers on some of the best places to find some information about the competition, the rules, the judging. Oops, that's not what I want to do, but we're doing plus. There we go. Bumping that up a little bit.
The countdown has begun.
Oh yeah, this thing always stresses me out.
Oh yeah.
Wow, geez. At least it's not showing the seconds. That used to worry me. But yeah. So callforcode.org is the place for the competition official rules, the judging, and things like that. Developer.ibm.com is where you'll find the tools for developing your solutions to Call for Code. So the very first thing you can do is check out the challenge. You can register for the competition by accepting it. You've got the submission link here too. But first, let's take a look at the actual competition details itself. So we do have, in addition to the main prizes, we also have some other regional opportunities for being recognized in your part of the world, as well as if you're part of the university. If you're part of an academic institution, you're eligible for an additional prize. You have until July 31st to get your submission in, and you can submit to either the climate change track or the COVID-19 track. You can submit one application to both tracks, but it has to be the same GitHub repo, the same application itself, although the submission details will change whether you're targeting one thing or another. Okay. The judging criteria, and I'll get over into some of the details on that soon, but we've got 4 criteria here. They're equally weighed. So it's not, you got to make sure, you hit all of them. The more you can satisfy the judges on each of these criteria, the better off you're gonna be. And I'll get into details where some of them kind of seem to be, counteractive goals, but I'll get into why and how you can focus on them. Okay, the submissions themselves. So IBM is the founding partner of Call for Code. We're providing the technology for the competition. So you must use one or more IBM cloud services. We've got a catalog of close to 200 services there. Many of them are free, so you don't have to pay for anything to take part, but you have to use at least one of them. We also have partners in the ecosystem like Here Technologies, which does geolocation. So you can use some of those APIs, and you can integrate with external services, right? So you can use Google Maps, for example, in your solution, right? It's not just purely running on the IBM cloud. We do see a lot of modern applications today that depend on lots of different services from across many different providers, but need one. You need to be at least 18 years old, as well as up to 4 other teammates of yours. You can only be part of one team. One question we often get is, how do I specify my team members, right? So this actually happens at submission time. So if you're working through a couple of different ideas, that's fine at this point. But once it comes down to actually submitting, you've got to commit to being on just one team. So keep that in mind. There's a participation agreement that highlights the real detailed conditions, terms, eligibility criteria, things like that. The most important piece in there, well, there's 2 important pieces. One is a code of conduct for how you work with other folks in the Slack community. And the other is around IP. So whatever you create for the competition, it's yours. But when you submit the competition, it's got to be readable by the judges. So it's got to be public. And if you do win a prize, one of the top 5 teams, you do have to release your code through the Apache 2 license as open source. But once you submit and it's public, that's pretty straightforward to do right there. And whatever you build has to be new as of February 26th. So you can have dependencies on open source projects available to everybody else as of the start of the competition. But what you create, the innovation in there has to be new. So if you built something 5 years ago, it's great. You brought it in here. It can't be a product already. It can't be in use beforehand. Okay. So those are the key. So callforcode.org/challenge is the main place to learn all those details. And you can also then go check out the submission form. So even if you're not ready to go, it makes sense to go take a look at kind of the end result of what you need to prepare in the next 14 days. Well, it's 2 weeks away now. The submission page is also on callforcode.org. So you've got your, the team lead is the person that's going to be submitting the application, and each of the additional folks on your team have to independently accept the participation agreement. So no matter if you're the team lead or not, you're going to have to fill out one of these forms. So if you scroll on down, before I even get to the form, just there's a description here. You're going to need a team name or a project name. You're going to need a short description, something that's kind of a tagline for it. You'll need to choose which track you can submit for. I see there's a question about submitting to both tracks, right? So if you submit to both tracks, which you can do, it still has to be the same application, right? You might have some more descriptions or different descriptions depending on which track you're submitting for, but you would submit twice, but with the same repo link. Okay, so pick the track, choose whether you're an eligible student. You can also opt in for that prize. It's an additional prize. And provide your link to the public GitHub repository or GitLab or Box, wherever the judges can pull down your code and take a look at them. So it's very important. This is a call for code, so working code, a solution. It is not a way to just propose an idea for someone else to build or to request for funding for something you're going to build. Just make sure you're creating something that is working, that's ready to go, that can be judged, and it's really going to really show some great innovation.
Yeah, and just to add what Dan is saying, if you have a mock-up and a visual prototype, but it's not functioning, it does have no code, that also would not count. We're looking for projects that are completely coded out. They don't have to have the full solution, the full vision of the platform, but you should have at least a prototype that works and that can be deployed in the real world.
Yeah, great points, Pedro. Cool, and what's a really strong part of your submission, really what's going to catch the eye of the judges is your demo video, right? So you're limited to 3 minutes, so make them count. I'll talk a bit about some of the best practices there, but public videos, the judges can view it. If you have additional demos and stuff, just include that in your repo. The judges can dig into that, but this is your pitch video. This is how you hook people on the problem you're solving and how you did it. And again, think about a broad audience. Imagine like you're broadcasting a commercial. Be crisp about it. Make sure you clearly convey what you've done and not just show off the technology. You got to talk about why that's important. The list of the IBM Cloud services or systems, solution roadmap. I'll get into that in a bit, but you only have a few months to build an application, so we understand that they may not be the various levels of maturity. We also get a question, how complete does it need to be? The answer is as complete as you can make it, because you're competing against a whole bunch of other folks that are also in various states of completion. So there's no real right answer there. But if you create a prototype, maybe you've only implemented one part, you have code for one part of your larger system. If you can talk to a roadmap that says, here's the piece that proves out this one use case within a larger problem. If you can talk to how you expand that one idea for one area and maybe how it expands to other problems or other contexts, that's where your roadmap comes into play. It's a degree of kind of showing the maturity and your vision for the project. And then, as I mentioned, you list out your team members. This is when you declare your teams. And you can go submit. There's no way to edit your submission afterwards. So what you do, if you've changed anything, change your teammates, change your description, just resubmit. We'll take the latest submission from that team member's email address, that leader's address, as the final submission. So you have until US Pacific time on July 31st to do that. Yeah, so these are the 2 links to the forums. Pretty straightforward. You just work through, you'll answer each question. David Clark Cause is the creator of Call for Code. IBM is a founding partner. So David Clark Cause owns the privacy policy. Check that out. And then, of course, the submission participation agreement is very important as well. Other than that, yep. This is an external competition because IBM is sponsoring it. IBM employees are not eligible for this, nor are Red Hat employees. We held internal competitions already. That deadline is passed for internal folks, and we're judging those applications right now. In the future, after the competitions, of course, you can collaborate on each other's open source projects. But for the contest point of view, this is all non-IBM employees. So that's about it for the form. Yep, I described all these fields here. You'll fill that out and submit that to take part in the competition, and then you're entered. So a couple of things before I get back to some of the tips. But there is a project sample linked from that submission form. Provides a good way to see kind of what your end result repo should look like. It has a nice template in here. Not everything here is required. It provides a little bit of guidance. People kind of want to see what a submission looks like. And I'll show how Prometeo used this template themselves last year and how they made it effective. But essentially, if you have your submission's got to be in English, but if you have translations, you can provide those. Describe the problem you're particularly solving, how your technology solution addresses that. You can embed your short video here or put a longer one in your repo. Describe it at a high level visual detail, what you've built. This is also helpful for non-technical judges to kind of get a feel for how systems might integrate. And the project roadmap. So this is actually one of the really powerful things around the first year's winners submission is they laid out a vision for where they wanted to go with their solution. And if you're not familiar with what Project Owl built, it was a mesh network that could be quickly and cheaply deployed to collect needs of folks where they may not have a network connectivity. And it also has a software dashboard. So they have 2 different components they were trying to describe in their solution. One of which was this Owl cloud software, their organization, whereabouts, and locations, and then the ClusterDuck hardware itself. So they shown basically they had done their user research, they had done their architecture, they started building some prototypes, they did some testing, and then they integrated some additional services they thought were very helpful, like a Watson bot for helping guide users through the process. And then they talked to what they wanted to do, if they won the competition. So they wanted to be able to test out in the field, which we did actually with Pedro as well. We went down to Puerto Rico 5 times with them, including up front on a 2-week really intensive test with the IBM Service Corps. So that roadmap was super critical to kind of what they built for the competition. And then the rest of the repo, the sample repo, it's about basically showing how a judge might stand it up. And you can provide a link to a running instance. One caveat here is if you are using a light account, an IBM Cloud light account, if it's not redeployed within 2 weeks or 30 days, I don't remember exactly what it was, it will just stop. So if you do have a live demo, just make sure it's still up. Otherwise, capture it in the video. If you have something like a Kubernetes cluster that maybe you've paid for, it's not cheap maybe to keep the whole thing running. As long as you capture the recreation steps, as long as you show maybe in your video the working solution, you can take down the system if that's a concern for you. That's about it from the project repo. Let me just take a look at what Prometeo had done. So this is a version of their submission repo. We're working in parallel in another location on the solution we're deploying with them. But they essentially forked that sample repo. And, they had created a nice little logo, not necessary, but it's a nice touch. They created a nice high-level overview of what they built, some great pictures of it during some of the testing they had done during the competition. They have their 3-minute video embedded here. And then separate documents for setting up the solution, talking a bit about their roadmap and what they had built there. So pretty straightforward. They did have someone help them create a video for them. That's fine if you have someone that can help you do that. That is not part of your team, but they're just helping you assemble some stuff. That's fine. So they had a video done by one of their colleagues, and they included some other mentors just to give them some acknowledgments there. Again, they weren't on the team; those folks didn't win the prize, but they helped, guide Prometeo along. Okay, so Pedro, before I hop into the specific top tips, do you have any feedback? I know actually Pedro competed in a Call for Code before he was an IBM employee. So he won a hackathon in Puerto Rico. So maybe you have some tips on kind of what wowed the judges. I was one of the judges. I can tell some point of view, but your approach to your pitch. On that.
Definitely. Yeah, well, I think you can definitely give the feedback from the judges' side. As a participant, my first year in Call for Code, as Dan was saying, it was 2018. I think it was about July, about 2 years ago. I think I should check out my photo album to see. So the application I was creating in that moment was called DroneAid, and I was envisioning basically a software you could add to drones or to satellite imagery, just like a visual feed, and then use that to find if people needed help through an SOS a message. Think of like Castaway, right? The SOS on the beach, or in my case in Puerto Rico, after Hurricane Maria, people were putting SOS, I need food and water, on the roads and the roofs of their houses. So based on that context, I then thought of a way that we could automate it using drones and AI. So the drone part, basically, imagine a drone that could fly over an area, take pictures of the damages, scan it, and then you would have an application that would take all those pictures, all those videos, and then analyze them to say, well, there are 5 people who need help in this area based on the environments of the floods and the damages. So we can create a pipeline to do damage assessment a lot faster. So that's how the idea started. And let's talk a little bit about my approach. So first of all, I'm a self-taught developer. Okay, I don't have a traditional computer science degree. I started developing when I was 11 years old, creating websites and applications. But I'm not the traditional computer scientist as many people are. So if you don't have a computer science degree, don't worry. I was able to create an application using Watson. So since the main component, the hardest thing was machine learning for me, because I know how to create websites with React, with Vue, etc. I needed to figure out that part. So it was around 8 p.m. on a Friday night. I went to the IBM team, and I just started asking questions. Hey, I want to create this application. It's a little bit ambitious. I want to attach it to my drone. I had all of these questions. So that's how I first started. And afterwards, I was sat down, and I think it was you, Dan, who taught me how to use either Watson or I think it was the serverless part. Yeah. So
optical character recognition. That's right. Because you were originally looking at using words, recognizing Spanish words, but you came up with a better solution.
Exactly. Yeah. So one of the most important things is that I was looking for feedback, right? I had the idea, but I didn't start hacking away. I was constantly asking for feedback, validating if this would be a good idea, if this is scalable, what are the limitations. And based on that feedback, then during the night, I was able to create like a simple language, right? Because I was trying to use object character recognition, OCR, to detect SOS, but it didn't work well, right? So during this, by the way, this hackathon was 24 hours. So I didn't have months to submit, right? So moving forward during the night, I actually slept. I was very, very important for me to sleep. I slept a few hours, came back, and by the time I got the images, I was able to train the model. I was able to use it in a very simple testing application I made, and it worked, right? So I wasn't thinking of building in that moment, right? Because it was just for a 24-hour hackathon, building the full application, front end, back end. I was more concentrated on proving that the machine learning part would work, because I know the rest I could do. So another thing is, in that moment, I was particularly very interested in looking for mentors. So that's one of the benefits of Call for Code. If, there has to be a winner, of course, but if you don't win, but you learn something, you learn how to use machine learning, is that really a loss? No. I didn't win the competition, but I was able to eventually get a job at IBM a year later. So learning these things are very helpful. So I think the biggest takeaway was for me, and all the hackathons I participated, was making sure the idea is validated. Make sure, and I think by now it's already a little bit too late, right? We can talk a little bit more. If you have not participated in Call for Code, you haven't started yet, what you could do, because you do still have time. So I thought of a way. We needed to confirm that this would work, and then I talked to people, and then I figured out what is the most important thing I need to build. Make sure that worked well, and then started building the rest as time went on. So Dan, from your perspective, and one more thing, I think this is very important, my pitch. I think one of the most important things was how I told the story. I spoke from the heart, but I also showed that it worked. I talked about how my grandmother, she passed away after Hurricane Maria, and I thought of this application, dedicating it to her, dedicating it to the rest of the people who could use this software, who could use DroneAid for good. So try to make it personal, but also don't make it a story about a life story, right? You need to just say, hey, I built this application because I want to keep my grandmother safe. That is enough. Try to tell that personal story and why you're creating it. I think that's the most important thing when you're pitching this, when you're creating the video. Explain why this is important first. Don't go into the demo or to the features. Really take some time to explain why. So Dan, what do you think I did well in that hackathon? Like what were the biggest lessons learned?
Yeah, 3 things come to mind. Number 1 was you were solving a real problem. It was inspired by your own experience. So it wasn't a perceived problem. You grounded it in, this was the problem. If I had my technology, then this is what would have happened. So that was really powerful for tying together. You added the local context to it, number 2. But also, because you moved from the OCR, the character recognition, focusing on Spanish language, and by using the symbol language, you were able to show that this was something that not only was valuable in Puerto Rico, but also could be transferred internationally. So that transferability factor was there. So you had a complete demo. That's one judging criteria. Number 2 is transferable. And then grounding it in a real problem. And then finally, it was simple and innovative and really something that you could take forward, even though you had the 24 hours. It was something powerful that, had you taken more time. And actually, there's a URL here to the GitHub repository of how DroneAid evolved. And if we could pop that up on the screen, I'll kind of take you through some of the pieces of it just to give you inspiration for it. Let's see, can we get my screen up? But in any case, if you go to, so DroneAid here, basically he was able to talk essentially about, you can learn more about his origin story. Here's that hackathon. There's my beautiful little head in the background there.
Without the beard, I like to say in IBM that I was born at that hackathon. The modern day Pedro Cruz, who you know today, was born over there in that hackathon.
Yeah, and even actually this video, we recorded it of Pedro, at the event, but this could almost work as a submission video itself because he's laying out stories, talking about what inspired it and all that. But again, he really had come up with this great symbol language, and we evolved it to be based on a UN standard. And just showed a demo of this working, which was great. The version that's in here that's evolved is something you can work with. A test drone. You can control it from your computer. You can program it. So really cool stuff in there. So if you want to check that out, learn about how he approached this. It's definitely, I think, a great story there.
Yeah, and one of the coolest things is the contributors. Could you scroll down there, back down?
Sure.
The contributors. So one of the most amazing things was after I was able to create the project, I got an amazing group of contributors: Val Barbosa, Nick Bordacos, John Wallachy, Daniel Krook, we have him here, Derek, Wes Turner, all these amazing people they see the project, they say, hey, I can help with this, and they start contributing. So again, call for code, yes, it's a competition, but think of that the code that you created, even if you don't win, could be used by someone around the world. So I think that's very powerful, and one of our biggest philosophies here in Call for Code and IBM.
Yep. Awesome. All right. So this is a good segue now into kind of talking to the key tips. So let me kind of talk a bit about those. Let's see. Yeah, here we go. All right. So as you mentioned, there are 4 key criteria. And as you heard from Pedro, he kind of hit on each of these and made it very clear for the judges in his short pitch about, what his solution was and how it hit on these. They're equally weighed. And, if you score really well on one, less well on another, because maybe they're kind of countervailing, priorities for you, that's fine. You're looking for an overall average that's high in each of them as much as possible. But yeah, completeness and transferability. So this is showing, again, it's subjective, it's relative to all the other people submitting, but the more complete code you have, the better. One point of view I've had here is, people say, okay, I've designed this whole system. How much of that whole system needs to be in place? Completeness in that case doesn't mean you have completed the whole vision of what you've built. It's more about having built out at least a good section of it that can stand alone, that shows the work, the promise end to end, and then can easily, you can easily see where that would grow to approach different extensions to it. So get a piece of working code and get that done well, something that can be demoed.
For example, in my case, I want to create a drone, just in case. I want to create a drone that can help people, that can do this all autonomously. But that I know is going to take probably years and a lot of funding. So what I focused on was the machine learning part, the artificial intelligence or the software. Make sure, right, if you still don't know if you're going to submit your project, right, let's pretend that you already started months ago, you still have it kind of off the shelf, and you're still debating whether to submit or not. Just take your video, take all the information that we're giving you, and consider submitting, because you never know what could happen, right? I know many people have doubts and see previous year's winners, and they look very professional, they look amazing, but just remember that these people, they're just solving real problems. So if you're solving a real problem and you have a good solution and you have a nice prototype, that might just be enough to get a prize, right? So
yeah. Great points. And that leads into the effectiveness and efficiency part. So really in your submission, showing you've done the research, you've understood what's out there, how you can do something better, and then kind of how it can be measured. What's your impact? Can you demo, the potential for this thing? Are you doing it well? Are you not just adding a Rube Goldberg machine to a simple problem? If you don't know what those are, it's the diagrams of, like Mousetrap, you have all these things. Try to keep it simple, effective, and efficient. Use innovative technology, of course, but try to make sure that doesn't overshadow what you're trying to do and the message you're trying to get across. Design and usability. This is something where you've got to really clearly know your end user. In the case of Project Owl, with their mesh network, they had 2 different types of users. They had the people under stress who are trying to use some technology to connect with others. So instead of the mesh network connectivity being required through a mobile app that was installed on something, they actually took over the captive portal Wi-Fi on all phones. It's built in there as a way to use that as a user interface. So nothing to install under stress with no connectivity to begin with. But if you're within range of these mesh nodes and you have just enough connectivity, that was enough to show the user interface. And if you're building something, for example, for an incident commander or a decision maker that's under a lot of stress, or a medical professional or a parent, a haggard parent who's trying to work and their child's in the house, think about how much patience they might have to use the solution, and whether it's worth the effort. So keep that end user in mind. We have a methodology called design thinking. Look it up. It's a great way to help formulate these personas and how you get from the current situation to where they want to be. Finally, creativity and innovation. This is probably my favorite category. And it's one of those that kind of can be counterbalanced against completeness and transferability. If you create some brand new approach to a problem that hasn't been done before, but clearly shows potential, that can be very powerful. My favorite example here is in the first call for code, there was a team that had looked at the tsunamis in Sri Lanka. And one thing that stood out to them doing research about that, how to mitigate a tsunami, is that there was a lot of human loss of life, but at the large game park, none of the large animals had been killed by the tsunami. And they were trying to figure out what exactly was it the animals knew or were able to detect before the humans did, even with our early warning systems. They don't know exactly why, but they saw that figure and they realized, okay, all the large animals had moved to higher ground. So their solution was, okay, we will, as part of tracking large game in this park, give them a device. And if it shows them going latitude and longitude up topology, we knew that was an additional sixth sense, that was the name of their solution, that could be used to supplement early warning systems. So they obviously couldn't test it with real animals. They couldn't go deploy it, but they really sketched out exactly what needed to be done, provided an algorithm for it, and kind of demoed how it would work, even though it wasn't obviously fully fleshed out. It was a powerful idea. It was something that was worth exploring, and it was really just amazing innovation. So there's some examples there.
Yeah, and just to jump in here, we have a great resource about design thinking. So we're going to pop it up right now in the screen. But basically here, you can learn about the courses that we take to become practitioner of design thinking. There's a free course and also blog posts, educational resources on how IBM, how we think about this, right? I'm creating solutions for people. There's a specific methodology. So highly recommend you check out that if you're interested in learning more about design thinking, as well as usability and user experience.
Yeah. And if you spend some time there, you definitely, I think it's going to give you a leg up on that design and usability aspect criteria. So focusing on your end user.
Yeah. And Dan, we have one question here in the chat.
Sure.
How about you take that one?
Let's see. We got. Okay. So Meg Phillips. All right. We know her from the Slack channel. Great to see that she's attending. So she asks, how can we handle an ever-shifting set of circumstances? So the education crisis from COVID continues to evolve. What advice can you offer? Is last minute bad? We'll get into the procrastinator tips a little bit later, but this is a great question, right? So 2020, if nothing else, it showed us how to be resilient and agile in the face of change. So one of the great things about some solutions, and we had an early, we highlighted some COVID solutions from the earlier part of the competition. What was great about those solutions is that they were built tactically for COVID related social and business aspects, but you could see in each of those ideas that there was something that could take them forward in another context. So Safe Queue was one that was specifically for managing logistics of people waiting in line while socially distanced outside of stores. That technology was framed for COVID, but you could imagine that same technology being used for amusement park lines, right? The core of the idea, just think about the different contexts you can use it in. And, if you describe some of those additional things, here's the specific context I was talking about, but again, talking to the transferability, the larger vision of if this project lived for 5 years, what else would it do? Just understand and try to capture those ideas within your submission. So it definitely is about understanding where the project can go in the future.
Definitely. And also submit early. Don't leave it for the last day. Highly recommend you do it at least the day before, at least.
Yeah, you never know if the video is going to give you some issues or you want to recut it. But again, you can submit today. You can keep updating your submission. Get your submission in today. At least you're entered in the competition. But you can improve it as you go. And I'll talk a bit about what you can do after the deadline in a bit here. But okay, yeah. So again, you have to create something new here. you can depend on external services, external libraries that were created, but those had to have been open sourced before February 26th and available to everybody else. Teams of up to 5 can't be on multiple teams, and you can submit the same application to both tracks, one or just one or the other. And it's you got to use an IBM service in there. It's amazing. We did see some great solutions come in to the early deadline for COVID that could easily have gone from, hey, I built this thing on Node.js with MongoDB, but it wasn't. We have those services on the IBM cloud, so that submission could have easily just deployed it to the cloud and been eligible. But they said, no, it doesn't use any IBM services. So therefore it was disqualified, even though it had the potential. So really just look into the catalog, find something you can integrate with and use that.
Yeah, so we have a few more questions in the chat here. Let's see. So you have to be 18 years and above to submit for Call for Code. Unfortunately, if you're less than 18, then you would have to, what we recommend is just continue developing your software. You can, look for mentorship, but unfortunately, you do have to be 18 to submit.
Yep. And then question here, I'll take the one. Yeah. So do individuals stand a lower chance of winning compared to teams? That's a great question. So I'll compare and contrast 2 different teams. So if we look at Prometeo, the team that won last year, they had a set of 5 folks on the team. One was, they weren't all developers, which was important. They only had really 1 developer on the team, but they had a firefighter, a nurse, a PhD engineer, a data scientist, and a full stack developer. And although their technology solution, was maybe less mature than some of the other finalists, because they had solved a real problem and had folks on the team, they all contributed something, even though it was only 1 technologist, that was a full-time technologist. So they did well with 5 people, all with different skills. The counterexample to that is actually SafeQ. So they were one of the applications we highlighted earlier. It was just one guy, one retired guy living in LA. And he knocked it out of the park with an amazing application. He was able to move fast, iterate on it quickly, because he didn't have dependencies on other people and time zones, maybe from other teammates, working on each other's schedules. It was just him. So he moved very fast, and I think that was both ways are legit. So don't feel bad if you're just committing. You're submitting alone. It's really, you can go either way with it. Okay.
Yep.
Cool. All right.
Exactly. So hey Dan, how about we shift gears now to show what made Project Owl and Prometeo very successful in their submission videos.
Okay, that sounds good. Do you have videos up, or?
We'll cue them in the next couple seconds. All right, so we're going to share the first video, which is Project Owl. For those who are watching, basically, we're going to be showing these 2 videos of the previous Call for Code winners, Project Owl in 2018 and Prometeo in 2018. So we're going to take those videos, break them down very quickly so you can see the previous winners, and then we can discuss your questions. So let's take it away.
Disaster preparation, management, and recovery is a complex, high-pressure, and costly challenge. OWL is a sophisticated disaster management solution for first responders and civilians. Leveraging the latest IBM Watson AI and IoT cloud-based services, OWL provides a complete operational assistant before, during, and after a disaster, regardless of the cause, scale, or location of the incident. As a first responder or incident manager, we can start by creating an incident and adding information such as the name and location and establishing a structure of command. These individuals can directly communicate with one another through the OWL platform. We can set up resource allocations, adding quantity and location so they will appear on our map. Ask to see weather forecasts to anticipate hurricane damage. Use the mapping toolset with drawing capabilities to outline wildfires and flooding. OWL is also useful for civilians affected by a disaster. These individuals may log into OWL and share information about their condition, view location data, as well as upload photos of property and damage to catalog for insurance claims. All of this is offered through an intuitive conversational interface. Managing a disaster is as simple as just talking to OWL. great for the tired and stressed out first responder or civilian who wants to focus on survival, not fiddling with a computer. Owl's management capabilities render a compelling solution, especially for large-scale incidents with a lot of complexity. These incidents, however, pose another challenge, as it is these disasters where infrastructure and connectivity are most likely to be offline. In these scenarios, we can deploy a mobile version of Owl disaster management to civilians and responders. To do this, we have designed portable IoT devices called ducks. Together, we call a networked cluster of these duck devices a cluster duck. This hardware network can distribute Owl software to affected geographies where standard infrastructure and communications is offline. Each duck link generates a Wi-Fi network that consumer electronics connect to and provides a space for civilians to share information with first responders. The cluster duck network devices are designed for quick deployment to a large geographical area in a cost-effective manner through commercial drones. Owl is a sophisticated incident management system for civilians and responders that is accessed effortlessly through a natural conversational interface. And in the worst disasters, Owl can be deployed to geographies through our mobile network hardware. A longer demonstration and more details can be found on our website. We are looking for passionate developers to build on top of our open source software and hardware, and we are working closely with EMS, government, and technology experts to bring this solution to the people that need it most. Thank you.
Awesome. So as you saw, that was a complete demo video. I think Brian, the CEO, one of the team members of Project Owl, did a very good job in explaining how does the software work, why is it important, and what you can do with it. It was very clear to me when I saw the video the first time, and now seeing it 2 years later, that this software has a lot of potential to not only just help in natural disasters, but in other areas as well. Not only that, they had a complete solution, an end-to-end solution that was hardware-based, but also software-based. So that's personally why I thought they did an amazing job on their video.
Excellent. So do you want to show the Prometeo video now? We'll go into that one. Yeah, and I think this is a great example too. This was interesting because Prometeo is from Spain, right? So English wasn't their first language. So really conveying their idea, the visuals were something that were very powerful. So let's take a look at that one.
Prometeo, Firefighters' Health Platform. Wildfire is the most frequent natural disaster in south of Europe. Firefighters are always ready and prepared to save lives. When a firefighter is working on wildfires, he's inhaling smoke and toxic substances. Who takes care of our firefighters? The command center could monitor firefighters' health status through color signals and alert. Welcome to Prometeo, the cognitive platform to take care of wildland firefighters' health and safety in real time through sensoring, monitoring, and learning about each firefighter's experience that is different and unique. Prometeo are based on several IBM services. First, Health Device. The firefighter wears a small device with multiple sensors to recollect key data such as temperature, humidity, and amount of smoke. We collect these values and we send them through the internet to the IBM IoT platform. This phase was marked by a challenge of delivering the health device with at least 3 sensors. Once we got it, we did our best to place the wearable device properly. Now we're testing prototypes to ensure that everything is working properly. Second, IBM IoT. Once we enroll the device and the metrics are ready on the IBM IoT server, they are sent to a Node-RED server. Third, Node-RED is in charge of facilitating the communication between the IoT service, the machine learning module, and our front-end service. When we receive the data from the IoT device, we manage the information with our machine learning module. Then the result is the firefighter's health status, green, yellow, and red. On top of that, and in order to have historical data, we store the information on a cloud database. Fourth, IBM Container Service. We need to show the data in a comprehensive way. We developed a service in Kubernetes inside an IBM Container Service. We also use WebSocket Server and NGINX Web Server. And finally, any client that supports JavaScript and WebSockets can connect to our dashboard, which shows firefighters' health status in real time.
How Prometeo works: two main functionalities, real-time functionalities and trend analysis capabilities.
The roadmap shows the first phase with focus on having a minimum value product, and the second phase to develop the health trend capabilities and additional sensors in the device. More than 3 million firefighters are exposed to high radiation and dangerous toxic components. The risks are increasing due to climate change and global warming. Prometeo is the dream of 5 people with experience in different areas: 1 firefighter, 1 nurse, and 3 IT specialists. We would like to take care of our heroes. Are you ready to help our firefighters with Prometeo?
Excellent. Yeah, every time I see that, it's amazing. It appeals to every judge. They see that they've got their end user in mind. It's not theoretical, and they walk through the architecture and they walk through the roadmap. So it ties the entire submission together. So even not even looking at the rest of the submission, a judge can just immediately kind of get what they've built, how mature they are, where they want to go with it. So,
exactly. Yeah, I really like it because they show, and let's talk about comparison, right? This is the second year of Call for Code. That Prometeo team already has watched many of the Call for Code videos from last year. So that's one tip I recommend. Watch previous years. Go to YouTube, look for Call for Code submission, and you can watch other projects as well. So from there you can get ideas. But I think the most important thing from these 2 demo videos is that they told the why. Why is this important? How it will help people, and then they went into the technology. Many times, engineers, software developers make the mistake of focusing. I'm using these features, artificial intelligence. I'm gonna save everyone with my technology. We really like that hunger and that ambition, but we need to see that this works. So in both of the submission videos that we saw, they showed exactly how the software works. Right? It's not a purely marketing inspirational video. They go step by step. So I think in your submission videos, make sure that you present the idea, explain why it's important, and also try to show exactly how it will work and impact people's lives.
Yep, exactly. So now with the last few minutes here, why don't we do 2 things? Number 1, I'll just go over some of the tips. We'll talk about what you can do after submissions. And then Pedro will have you wrap up, give some people some next steps, including some other resources they can look at. So if we can share my screen, I'll just run through a few of these tips. These are also linked from a blog post, which we can share as well up on the screen. But yeah, make sure you do that research up front. Understand, there's existing solutions out there. How will yours address the problem, and how will it integrate with existing tools? So as you look at potential ways to monitor water usage for water sustainability or energy sustainability, look at the standards, look what's deployed in what parts of the world, things like that. Number 2, make sure the documentation is great. Again, creating the README file based on the project sample is the quickest way you can do that, especially if you have limited time. Clone that thing. Use that as your starting point, learn what's there, toss out what you don't need or don't have, keep it nice and simple. But make sure you kind of see what's really good for documenting source code repository. And by using that common format, you make it easier for the judges too. The video, yeah. So you don't have to, you can have somebody help you create a video. You can record it yourself from your own transcript. You saw both kind of examples there with Owl and Prometeo. Make sure you've really got that down. So 45 seconds, what exactly is the problem? How'd you solve it? Maybe do a little bit of the demo, the full user flow. Don't take too much time. Try to cut it very simply. Cut out your waiting steps. Just do the editing very, very crisply. And then the last wrap up is there on the results and what you're going to do next, assuming you win, something like that. So that's a great way to do it. And 4th tip, right? This one always comes up is the best application in the world. If you can't judge it, you're not going to be able to do well in the competition. So flip your GitHub repositories to public or your GitLab. You can keep them private until submission deadline if you want to. We won't look at them until the next day, August 1st. But make sure they're publicly available for the judges to look at. If we can't look at them, we can't even get them to the judges. They'll be disqualified right away. And the same goes for your video. If you've got a password for it, make it very clear in your description that it's there. But that's not ideal either. You definitely want to make sure that it's as simple as possible to evaluate your solution.
Also, just to add there, the license. I know this is a question that many people get when you're creating your repository. What license should I use? The most popular one that is used is the Apache license version 2. Dan, where else could we find resources for developers to learn about this? On what license?
So Apache 2 is a license you're required to use for if you accept the prize, right? If you're one of the top 5. And it's great because it's really business friendly. It's really good for sharing. It's not very encumbering in terms of if you compare it to other licenses like the GPL, there's a lot of requirements on you if you modify the solution. So as things go, it's a really good license. It's very compatible in many ways with MIT and BSD, which are more permissive. But that's definitely the one we recommend you use in there. A final tip here, right? So we always, in modern software development, we always want to make sure we're creating your solution, you're responding to updated dependencies, security issues, DevOps pipelines and changes. So one key thing is after you submit, make sure that if you do continue to keep your momentum developing the solution, you do it outside of the thing that you submitted. So one approach to this is if you submit a GitHub repository with your submission, if you want to continue working on the idea, clone your own repository or put it in a different repo, continue your work there.
Or on a branch.
What's that?
On a branch, maybe?
Branch. Yeah, you can do a branch too. I tend to like cleaner separation, but yeah, you can create a development branch as well. The judges will only look at what was committed up until the deadline. But you can do that. There are things that you can do that you can't add new features, but some of the things I mentioned, if you see a typo, fix it. If there's a security alert on one of your dependencies, you get one of these dependabot pull requests for an NPM module, for example, you can accept that. And then if you have a continuous deployment that just repushes your application to keep it live, that's cool too, but no new features. But again, we want you to, if you do win the competition, and you get that support to deploy, if you have been in parallel, improving it up on the side, that gives you a leg up later, which is great. You can continue to build those skills, continue to show off what you've built, but just do it outside of the submission materials. Okay, we've got a minute or two left. So Pedro, let me give it to you to kind of wrap us up.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Dan, and everyone who has been watching. So next steps, we're going to have maybe 1 more minute for questions. So ask your questions now if you have any, but we have a few more tips to give out.
Okay.
So
we did already get one question in. By the way, it's if you have multiple repositories part of your solution, how do you submit that? That's a pretty straightforward one. There's an example actually on the submission form itself. Create an organization in GitHub. And point to the organization. Don't put like comma separated GitHub repositories in the field because that's like a broken link for judges. They'll think it's busted. So use an organization, then put your repos underneath that.
Yeah, or you could create a main repo, right? And then just make sure you have all the different repos in there. Yeah. That's also a popular way to do it.
Good. All right, go ahead.
Awesome. So, okay, let's just say July 15th, you just found out about Call for Code. You've been living under a rock or you've been too busy. There's a lot of things that are going on in this world, right? And not all the time we're looking at these opportunities. So let's just say you are just starting out today in Call for Code. What do we recommend? Okay, so first of all, keep it simple. Whatever solution you're thinking of, keep it simple. Second, focus more on the problem. I think it's very important that you focus on a very narrow, very important problem. I can't really think of one right now, but think of things that you have gone through. DroneAid came because I had a personal connection to Puerto Rico. I went through Hurricane Maria. I was months without electricity and ways to communicate with people. So, I use that context. So try to use your own context or your family member or someone close to you, I think that really resonates a lot. It's easier to push this out. If you're thinking of a solution for people thousands of miles away, it's a lot harder, right? At least that's my personal tip. And then, you can create solutions in 24 hours, right? I think hackathons are normally 24 hours, maybe 72 hours, the longer ones, but it is possible to create something pretty quickly. So, and then next tip, if you let's just say you have identified the problem, you went out there, did your research. Now it's the weekend, right? This weekend, and you want to start hacking, you want to start creating, designing your app. Make sure that you use our code patterns, our starter kits. Start there. You don't have to use it, but you can fork it and customize it to your own. Fortunately, we will not accept copies of starter kits, just in case you do need to add your own features, customize the software. We will know. So, but definitely leverage that. Many people don't know this, but DroneAid came from a code pattern. It came from IBM's resources. So I would recommend, if you still have not even thought about what to submit, just go through this process, create something, and then after the submission period, then the real work happens, right? The real work is going to happen because you have a whole year to prepare for next year. So we at IBM have been working on an academy. We're going to be announcing more details soon. But just in case, for those of you who are interested, let's just say, you don't have time to participate, you're working, or you just want to participate next year, you want to first focus on your skills. What we recommend is that focus on your skills, focusing on learning. We have prepared a Call for Code Skills Network. So the Call for Code Skills Network, by the way, it's still in progress. We're opening up now to our Call for Code community, but we're going to be adding new courses and also mini courses about our current open source projects with Project Out, Prometeo, and others. So if you haven't, let's just say, it's too late, or you already finished your submission, you want to participate for next year, start practicing, start learning, honing down your skills. We have still another year of Call for Code, and unfortunately, natural disasters, climate change, and COVID-19 might still be here. So we need to think in the future, right? So unfortunately, we also don't know what next year's Call for Code tracks are going to look like yet. But our point is, don't stop. Don't stop developing. If you need any help, we will continue to have the Call for Code Slack open and available, so you can continue to ask questions. You can participate in projects that are already out there and impacting people's lives, and you can contribute to previous Call for Code winners projects and learn from there. So Dan, do you have any other tips for our last minute guide to submissions?
Yeah, if we can pull up my screen, I think leaving from here, go to the developer.ibm.com/call-for-code site. So again, the IBM part is the technology and the resources. Callforcode.org is kind of where the official rules are and the judges. But go here, get started. We have a great getting started site where you can walk yourself through the 4 steps. So register, get your cloud account so you can use some of those IBM services. Start building. We've got the starter kits that Pedro mentioned. Those are great points to go from. Again, SafeQ started from one of these, and the guy was able to create an application extending it. It gave him all the React Native, for example, resources he needed to create a mobile app. Check out the rules. Join Slack. You'll find Pedro and I there, as well as other live streams you may hear about. And then you got the submission checklists. You got the link to submitting, and up at the top of the header on the main page, you also have a link to that blog around some of the tips we talked about here. So take a look at that, and best of luck in the competition. Let's see if we've got one last question here. Let's see.
So the question was about documentation. If you can add that after the deadline. I answered that, it is all right, but you really do want to have full complete documentation. So right after the deadline, you'll just go to your GitHub link. You can see it, right? So yes, but not recommended.
Yeah, just minor documentation updates are fine, but writing a whole thing. Again, if you want to continue working on your project, just do it in parallel elsewhere. And hopefully, the solution is one of the top 5, and you can rely on that later. But submit what you submit.
Definitely. All right. So if there are any more questions, you can feel free to reach out to Slack through even Twitter and our IBM developer Twitter account and our Call for Code account. But the best place if you need immediate support, let's just say you're having trouble with the IBM Cloud or with a service, you can go to the Call for Code Slack and learn more about the mentors, and the rest of the team will be available to help you. So from my side, best of luck. Remember to focus right now these last 2 weeks on that submission. There's not much that can be done right in 2 weeks and about new features. I think it would be more worth it if you focus on your demo video, your submission, and making sure your GitHub is ready to go.
Yep, exactly. Yep, and have other people take a look at it too, just to make sure your permissions are good. And incorporating last-minute feedback from your potential end users, and best of luck.
All right. Best of luck, everyone.
Bye-bye.